Daniel thought he had it figured out. 34 years old, maxing out his retirement account, making every payment on time, automatic transfers firing every Friday like clockwork. His bank kept congratulating him. You're building real wealth. His employer called him financially responsible. Credit score above 780. No missed payments. Textbook discipline. Then Daniel applied for a mortgage refinance after rates dropped. The bank denied him in 11 minutes. Not because he was reckless, because internally, he had already been classified as financially fragile. Too much income going toward debt. Too little liquidity outside retirement accounts. Too dependent on his paycheck. The institution praising his behavior was simultaneously running an account profitability model designed to keep him permanently predictable, permanently indebted, and permanently working. And here's the part that doesn't make the headlines. Daniel is not the exception. He is the business model. And millions of disciplined workers are unknowingly trapped inside the exact same machine. If content like this interests you, please hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss our next video. What happened to Daniel sounds personal until you realize the entire modern financial system depends on millions of people ending up exactly where he did, working longer, borrowing more, saving into vehicles they cannot easily access, while inflation quietly erodes the value of everything they think they own. In the United States alone, household debt recently crossed $17 trillion. Credit card balances hit record highs, while retirement anticipation also climbed. Think about that contradiction. People are supposedly becoming more financially educated, yet financially trapped at the exact same time, because the system does not reward independence. It rewards compliance. Banks profit when your money stays locked. Employers benefit when your healthcare depends on your job. Governments rely on workers continuously spending to sustain economic growth. Entire industries are structured around keeping people productive, predictable, and permanently anxious about falling behind. And the terrifying part is most people still believe this arrangement was built to help them succeed. Here's the mechanism almost nobody sees. Most wealth advice given to ordinary people was never designed to create freedom. It was designed to create stability for the system itself. Think about the standard formula repeated for decades. Get a job, take on manageable debt, invest consistently for 40 years. Avoid risk, trust institutions, delay gratification until retirement. On the surface, it sounds responsible, but underneath, that model keeps capital flowing upward while workers absorb nearly all the uncertainty. Your savings are exposed to inflation. Your retirement depends on markets you cannot control. Your salary rarely rises as fast as asset prices. And every major financial institution earns fees whether you win or lose. That is why disciplined people often feel stuck despite doing everything correctly. They are following instructions optimized for economic maintenance, not financial escape. The game was engineered around participation, not liberation. And once you understand that distinction, almost every mainstream piece of financial advice starts sounding completely different. The real damage is not just financial. It is psychological. People trapped inside the system begin blaming themselves for outcomes that were structurally predictable from the beginning. They think they lack discipline because they still feel behind after years of responsible behavior. They assume they made poor decisions because home ownership feels impossible. Retirement keeps moving further away, and one emergency can erase a decade of savings progress. Meanwhile, the pressure compounds quietly. Longer working hours, delayed families, chronic financial anxiety disguised as ambition, entire generations measuring self-worth through productivity because survival itself became tied to economic performance. And while individuals internalize the shame, institutions externalize the profits. Rising debt becomes consumer growth. Burnout becomes high-performance culture. Inflation becomes market adjustment. Language is carefully designed to make systemic extraction sound normal. That is why so many intelligent, hard-working people feel exhausted without understanding why. They are carrying the emotional weight of a system engineered to keep them permanently chasing stability instead of ownership. If you felt confused, discouraged, or quietly panicked about money despite doing everything society told you to do, That reaction is not irrational. In many ways, it is evidence that you are paying attention, because deep down, people can sense when the math no longer matches a promise. They notice salaries rising slower than living costs. They notice that owning assets matters more than working harder. They notice that every financial milestone now requires exponentially more effort than it did for previous generations. But instead of questioning the structure, most people question themselves. That is a psychological trap. The system works best when individuals personalize structural problems, when workers feel guilty instead of skeptical, when exhaustion gets interpreted as personal failure instead of economic design. And once you recognize that pattern, something important changes. Shame starts disappearing. Clarity replaces confusion. You stop asking, "Why am I falling behind?" and begin asking a far more dangerous question. Who benefits from me staying financially dependent forever? The people who eventually build real wealth usually make one critical shift before their financial situation changes. They stop behaving like ideal participants inside the system and start thinking like owners outside of it. That does not mean becoming reckless. It means understanding the difference between income and leverage, between saving money and controlling assets, between appearing financially stable and actually becoming financially independent. Wealthy individuals rarely rely on a single paycheck tied to one institution. They prioritize ownership, equity, cash flow, and asymmetric opportunities that grow faster than inflation itself. They learn how debt is strategically used instead of emotionally feared. They study tax structures. They acquire assets before credentials. Most importantly, they stop assuming mainstream financial advice is automatically aligned with their interests. Because once you understand the incentives underneath the system, your behavior changes naturally. You become harder to exploit, harder to control, harder to keep permanently dependent on wages. And that is where the real game finally begins. So what does escaping this cycle actually look like in practice? First, stop measuring financial progress purely through income. High earners are often some of the most economically fragile people in the system because their lifestyle expands faster than their ownership. Second, prioritize liquidity before appearances. A person with accessible capital has options. A person with impressive liabilities has obligations. Third, learn how assets behave during inflationary environments instead of assuming cash savings alone will protect you. Fourth, reduce dependence on any single institution for survival. One employer, one income source, one retirement account. That concentration creates vulnerability disguised as security. And finally, begin studying incentives relentlessly. Every financial product, every tax rule, every lending structure rewards someone on the other side. Your job is understanding who benefits before you participate. Because financial freedom is rarely about working harder than everyone else. It is usually about seeing the incentives more clearly than everyone else. Once that happens, your decisions start changing permanently from the inside out. The biggest lie many people were taught about wealth is that the game is fair if you work hard enough. But systems are not moral. They are incentive structures. And once you understand that, you stop expecting institutions to prioritize your freedom over their stability. You stop confusing participation with progress. You stop assuming financial security automatically leads to financial independence. Most importantly, you realize that building wealth is not about blindly following rules created during a completely different economic era. It is about understanding how power, capital, debt, and ownership actually move beneath the surface. That awareness changes everything. Because the moment people stop seeing themselves as obedient participants and start seeing themselves as strategic operators, the system loses its greatest advantage, unconscious compliance. And maybe that is the real reason these conversations make people uncomfortable. Not because the system is broken, but because more people are beginning to realize it's been functioning exactly as designed the entire time. If this changed the way you see money, subscribe now, because the next video breaks down exactly how wealthy people use the system differently while everyone else stays trapped inside it.